You're dependable, but there's a ceiling to that. I just don't see you leading at scale.
That conversation replayed in my head on loop cold, clipped, final, and now, 2 weeks later, the consequences of it were glowing on my screen. There's a specific kind of silence that fills an office at 8:43 May, on a Monday before the coffee kicks in, before the small talk starts, before the fake smiles take over. I was sitting at my desk, the one no one ever wanted, because it was too close to the hallway printer, staring at the subject line glowing in my inbox. Update on your promotion review. I didn't need to click it. I knew, my body knew, my stomach had known since Friday, when Clara's tone got that faux casual lilt, and she mentioned leadership conversations. I'd been here before 11 times, to be exact, but somehow, number 12 still had a sharper edge. I clicked anyway. While we appreciate your continued contributions to the strategic marketing team, at this time, I stopped reading. I knew the rest. I could have written it for them. Probably had. Behind me, someone popped a piece of gum, too loudly. To my left, the intern spilled a smoothie and muttered a curse under his breath. Across the open floor, someone said, "Oh wow." That was fast. And another voice replied, "Maya's really going places." I didn't need to look up. Of course it was Maya, 7 months in the company. Her greatest strategic contribution was suggesting we use pastel colors for a pharmaceutical rebrand, because they soothe people's eyes. She once asked me if brand architecture was something we needed to file with the city. Now she was a senior brand strategist. My Slack pinged, "Clara manager, can you swing by my office real quick?" That damn emoji. Clara's office was all glass, so you could see how little she actually worked. I walked over slowly, trying to feel nothing. I sat down across from her desk, which was spotless, except for a lavender-scented candle she never lit, and a framed quote that read, "Hustle, then sparkle." She didn't even wait for me to sit before launching in. "Lauren, I wanted you to hear it directly from me. We've gone with Maya for the senior role this quarter. It was a really close call. Really close. You've been doing excellent work." I nodded once. She's shown a lot of initiative, leadership presence. The team has responded well to her energy. She's been here 7 months, I said softly. Clara blinked. "I know, and you've been incredibly loyal. That matters. Don't think of this as a setback. It's more of a timing issue. Honestly, you're positioned beautifully for Q2, and I've already submitted your name again." Again, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I just stood up and left. Back at my desk, Maya was beaming, handing out shiny new business cards that said Senior Brand Strategist in thick serif font. Her lipstick matched her blazer. Someone gave her a cupcake with gold sprinkles. Someone else gave her a standing ovation. No, really? I stared at my screen. My email to Everwell Pharmacy's VP sat half-written. I'd been managing that account for 4 years before Maya knew where the shared drive was. I'd helped them through a labeling recall, rebuilt their patient trust score, reworked their messaging for an entire regional launch. Maya once spelled pharmaceutical wrong in a client email, but now she had a title, and I had... What? I sat there for hours, answered emails, cleaned up a broken slide deck someone dumped on me last minute, ate a sad salad at my desk, because no one invited me to Maya's celebratory lunch. I said congrats when she passed by. I don't know if she heard me. By 6:30 Mall. The office had mostly emptied out. The cleaning crew was vacuuming by the elevators. I packed up my laptop, wrapped my scarf around my neck, and headed down to the F train. On the ride home, I stared at my reflection in the window. My makeup had faded. My hair looked flat. I looked like someone who'd given too much for too little. Too long. At home, I microwaved lentil soup for the 3rd night in a row. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse. I just sat by the window in my Queen's apartment and stared at the distant city skyline like it belonged to someone else. I called my mom. "How was your day?" she asked. I paused. "Forgettable," she sighed. Same old story, same exact chapter. After the call, I sat on the floor for a while, not because I was meditating, just because I couldn't bring myself to move. Then I did something I hadn't done before, not after the 1st, 5th, or even 10th rejection. I opened my laptop, Google Drive, new folder, exit strategy, all caps. I stared at the folder name for a while. Then I opened a new doc inside and titled it, What They'll Miss, and I began to type platforms I built, clients I retained, campaigns I fixed that someone else got credit for, interns I mentored who now outranked me, pictures I saved at 11 p. The night before launch, Clara's favorite phrase. Let's circle back on this. The more I wrote, the more I remembered. The more I remembered, the angrier I got, but it wasn't rage. It was something colder, heavier, more efficient. Clarity. The realization that this company was never going to see me. Not fully. Not fairly. Not ever. I wasn't the wrong fit for the promotion. I was just the perfect fit to stay put. That was the design. A pillar. A rock. Something sturdy to lean on but never move. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake imagining something different. Not another company. Not another resume. Something I owned. Something with my name on the door. Something I could shape. Not survive in. Thrive in. The next morning, Clara walked by my desk and said, "Let's circle back soon." Okay. I looked her in the eye. Sure. I said, "Let's." She smiled like she'd won something. I smiled back, because I knew she hadn't. The silence wasn't sudden. It crept in slowly, like fog rolling over a city just before dawn. I didn't slam doors. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't submit a manifesto to HR or schedule a dramatic exit interview. I simply stopped giving them the part of me that had been so easy to take for granted. At first, I thought someone would notice. I thought Clara might pause when I stopped speaking up in meetings, that Maya would ask questions when I stopped proofreading her pitch decks, that maybe, just maybe, someone would pull me aside and say, "Lauren, you haven't been yourself lately." But they didn't. I answered emails. I met deadlines. I performed flawlessly, just without the shine, the sparkle, the willingness to bleed for results I wouldn't get credit for. I became invisible, and somehow, I'd never felt more in control. With every passing week, I moved deeper into what I called the quiet exit. It wasn't quitting, not yet. It was disentangling. Silently, strategically, I created a second folder in my exit strategy drive, proof of value. Inside it, I uploaded every slide deck I'd built that someone else had presented, every campaign brief I'd rescued from disaster, every email thread where I'd de-escalated angry clients without so much as a thank you. The files piled up fast. One afternoon, I stayed late not to finish deliverables, but to pull data. I documented which clients contacted me directly, instead of going through their assigned leads. I flagged every task the team deferred to me because you just do it better. By the end of the week, I had a map, not of what I did, of what would fall apart without me. They called it being reliable. I called it leverage. I started saying no, softly at first. No, I don't have capacity for that right now. No, I think Maya should take the lead. No, I'm not available over the weekend. The world didn't end, but cracks began to show. Maya missed deadlines. Clients started following up directly with me. Confused about handoffs, Clara pulled me into side chats more frequently, asking if I could just smooth things over real quick. And every time I helped, I logged it. Date, task, outcome, whose job it was supposed to be. It went into a file called Dependency Matrix. I wasn't just collecting receipts. I was building a foundation. Outside of work, I was laying bricks. I had dinner with Renee again, my former colleague, who now led strategy at a Brooklyn-based creative firm. "You're not just underutilized," she said. "You're undervalued. That's worse. I don't want to jump ship just to start over at another agency." She sipped her wine. "Then don't jump into someone else's boat. Build yours." It stuck with me. That night, I opened a new doc in my launch folder, Timeline to Independence. 6 months. That was the goal. Enough time to stabilize, to prep, to leave without burning anything, but without leaving the door open either. I began setting aside money, every bonus, every unused vacation hour cashed out, every freelance side gig I could squeeze in without drawing attention. I also started showing up to work like a shadow of my former self, still polished, still competent, but gone was the urgency, gone was the extra mile energy, gone was the hunger. The truth is, I'd been starving for years, starving for credit, for growth, for acknowledgement. And now that I'd stopped waiting to be fed, I was learning how to cook for myself. During one particularly chaotic Thursday, Maya completely dropped the ball on a deliverable for Everwell. Clara frantically pinged me. "Can you just jump in and fix this?" I did, in 15 minutes, and then I sent a client update email that made Maya's team look competent again. Clara replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I logged the entire incident. The next day, Maya stopped by my desk, holding a matcha, and said, "I seriously don't know what I'd do without you." I smiled. "You might find out someday." She laughed. She thought I was joking. That weekend, I walked through Soho, stopping at a co-working space that offered short-term office rentals. I took a tour, nothing fancy, just clean desks, good lighting, strong Wi-Fi, but it felt like oxygen. The woman showing me around asked, "Are you launching a startup?" Something like that, I said. She handed me a brochure. I took it like it was a key. The next morning, I bought a domain name, not for a blog, not for a resume site, for a business. It was simple, elegant, and it had my name attached to it. I didn't tell anyone at work. They still thought I was waiting. It was supposed to be a normal Thursday, the kind of Thursday where the fluorescent lights buzz softly overhead. The office coffee machine brews its third burnt pot of the morning, and people pretend they're busy while counting the hours until Friday. But by 9:15, my Slack had erupted into a cascade of desperation. Hey Lauren, do you know why the Everwell dashboard isn't pulling any data? Did you touch the segmentation file for Cura Labs? It's blank now. Hi, Clara said you might still have the Q4 budget summary. Can you resend? By the fifth message, I wasn't even annoyed. I was fascinated. I hadn't touched the Everwell dashboard in over a week. The segmentation file, I'd handed it off to Maya 2 Mondays ago. The Q4 budget, that was Luis's responsibility now. But somehow, when things broke, the first reaction wasn't to check their own work. It was to find me. I didn't respond immediately. I watched. 3 more messages, then a missed call from Clara, then an urgent flag on a calendar invite I'd never accepted. I sipped my coffee and stared out the window for a full 5 minutes. Then I opened a new entry in my dependency matrix. January 12th. Everwell dashboard error traced to Maya's edits. Cura Labs segmentation, overwritten accidentally by intern Maya, supervising. Budget summary, missing from team folder, forwarded from my local backup. All 3 routed to Lauren for rescue. Logged. 3 separate dependencies in 1 day. By noon, I'd fixed everything, but not before Maya panicked in a client meeting and called me mid-call to help clarify a few metrics. I dialed in. I smiled. I explained. I covered. Again, when the call ended, Clara messaged, "Lifesaver. Seriously, I owe you a bottle of wine." I didn't respond. I just added it to my exit playbook under a new subheading, critical failures that proved the point. The irony was, I hadn't sabotaged a thing. I wasn't orchestrating chaos. I was just letting people own their own mistakes. I'd removed my safety net. That was all, and it was enough. That evening, I took a walk through Central Park. The trees were bare, and the air had that dry, post-holiday stillness, like the city was holding its breath. I breathed easier out there than I had in months. My phone buzzed. Another Slack. I didn't check it. The next day, during a check-in with Clara, she said, "We're noticing a little instability across accounts. Clients are asking for more direct involvement. Could you maybe lean in a bit more over the next few weeks?" I smiled politely. "Sure," I said. "If it's critical." What I didn't say was, "This isn't a warning sign for me. It's one for you." That weekend, I met Renee at a cafe in Greenpoint. She pushed a folder across the table. "What's this?" "Freelancer onboarding kit," she said. "I spoke to our CEO. If you're serious about leaving, we want first dibs." I blinked. "You're offering me a client." "I'm offering you 3, she said, sipping her espresso. "All in healthcare, all frustrated with their current firms, all looking for someone exactly like you." I took the folder. That night, I opened my laptop and revised my 6-month exit plan. I added a new phase, client transition outreach, discreetly gauge interest from contacts I managed, under the radar. And then I created a calendar block for something new, Shadow Resignation Day. The goal, disappear for 1 day and observe what happened. No announcements, no reply, just silence. I picked a Thursday 2 weeks out, a day with 3 major meetings. 1. Everwell data delivery, and a Cura Labs quarterly prep deck due. I did all the prep ahead of time, but didn't send anything. When the day came, I logged in, checked the time, then closed my laptop. By 10 a.m., I had 5 missed Slack messages. By noon, 2 voicemails. By 2:30 Mime, I was CC'd on 3 internal escalations. By 4 Clara called my personal phone. I didn't answer. At 6:12 p.m., I sent a short note from my phone. "Apologies, was offline today. Hope everything went smoothly." No explanation, no guilt. On Friday morning, the tension was visible. Clara didn't say good morning. Maya looked like she hadn't slept. Luis was muttering to himself at the copier. Perfect. I updated my indispensability map to include shadow absence, triggered leadership inquiry, client prep incomplete without Lauren's files. Internal systems overloaded Maya and exposed knowledge gaps. Clara made no contingency plan. After work, I went home and poured myself a glass of wine. I watched the lights of Manhattan shimmer from across the river and thought, this wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was proof. Proof that I wasn't overreacting, that I wasn't imagining things, that I wasn't just some bitter employee nursing a bruised ego over 12 promotions passed over. I was essential. And the moment I decided to walk, they would feel it. When I first drew the roadmap, 6 months felt daring. The kind of plan people call brave when it works and reckless when it doesn't. But now, with 4 months left and every piece inching into position, it felt inevitable. I wasn't just leaving Northwell and Hunt anymore. I was building my way out. Bright North Media had become more than a name. It had structure, presence. My iron was active, the site was up, business cards ordered, a digital brand kit in soft navy and slate grey lived on my Google Drive. I even had a custom email signature. More importantly, the work was starting to come. 2 small consulting contracts had been signed through referrals, quiet ones, projects no one inside Northwell knew about. One was for a non-profit health tech startup based in Boston. The other was for a regional clinic chain in Pennsylvania that I'd once onboarded during my 2nd year. Quietly grateful they'd remembered me. Neither job paid much, but they weren't about money. They were about proof, confidence, the quiet thrill of making things happen without asking anyone's permission. At the office, things were fraying faster. Clara began opening meetings with more forced energy than usual. Let's kick off strong. Folks, she'd chirp, voice a bit too high, smile a bit too tight. Maya, meanwhile, had dropped the permanent grin and replaced it with a kind of distant, glassy-eyed professionalism. I recognized the look. That's what it feels like when you realize the game is rigged and you're not holding any cards. I had cards now, and I was learning how to play them. That Monday, Clara stopped by my desk just after 9 a.m. Her tone was rushed, which meant someone else had screwed up. "Can you cover the Everwell check-in this afternoon?" she asked. Maya's dealing with the deliverable lag and, well, you know them best. I stared at her for a beat longer than polite, then nodded once. Sure. The call went predictably. The client was frustrated about mixed messaging in their email automation stream. Maya had promised a personalized flow. What she delivered was barely segmented. I listened, took notes, clarified what had happened, and laid out a recovery strategy in 5 minutes flat. At the end, the Everwell lead said, "Honestly, we just feel better when Lauren's in the room." Clara heard it. So did Maya. Neither said anything. Later that day, Clara slacked me. "Thank you. You saved us today again. I owe you big." I added it to my exit binder. Line 74. That night, I walked into my apartment, took off my heels, and poured a glass of wine. Then I opened the folder titled Final Sprint. It had 3 tabs. Deliverables to transfer. Clients to approach post-resignation. Conversations I wouldn't have twice. I read each list like scripture, not because I doubted the plan, but because it reminded me who I had become. That week, Mason Wu, our elusive CEO, announced an emergency all-hands. It was over Zoom. 8 sharp on a Thursday. His video background was a luxury apartment in San Francisco, full of abstract art and cold modern furniture. He looked tired but tried to play energetic. "Let's talk real," he said, clasping his hands. "Our Q1 churn was higher than projected. Our teams are stretched. We're not losing talent, we're losing trust." He paused, probably hoping that would land as profound. It didn't. "We'll be rolling out a restructuring of the East Coast strategy group. We're going leaner, tighter, more impact-focused." Clara's face, visible in one of the dozens of squares on the screen, remained perfectly still. Maya looked like she was holding her breath. I took notes. Then, I opened a draft email. Subject, resignation, effective 2 weeks from today. I didn't send it. Yet, the next day, Renee called. She didn't text. She called. "You good for the 20th? I paused. "Yes, I've got 1 client signed. The other 2 are yours if you want them. You don't have to pitch, we'll do that for you. Just say the word." I said it. That evening, I opened my resignation letter. I added the new date, printed it on thick paper, folded it cleanly, slipped it into the inside flap of my leather laptop case. On Monday, Clara added me to a 10A. Leadership vision sync with Mason and the senior team. I didn't ask why. I knew. That morning, I dressed a little more deliberately navy blazer. No necklace, low heels, hair pulled back, neutral lipstick. A look that said, I am the adult in the room. The meeting was classic Northwell. Buzzwords everywhere. Agility, customer intimacy, synergistic outcomes. No substance, just noise wrapped in formatting. I only spoke once when a junior VP misunderstood a data point from the Cura Labs engagement. I corrected him gently but directly. Mason nodded. Clara smiled. Maya didn't look up. Afterward, Clara pulled me aside. She seemed nervous. "I just wanted to say thank you. I know things haven't been perfect. And I know we've asked a lot of you, but you've shown up every single time." I nodded, letting the silence stretch. We're working on making things better. I hope you'll hang in. I thought about all the ways I'd hung in, all the times I'd been the backup plan, the ghost behind the curtain, the person they praised quietly but overlooked publicly. I smiled politely. Thanks for letting me know. That night, I went home and prepared, not out of fear, but precision, because tomorrow, I would walk into that office and hand over my letter, and everything would shift. I arrived 10 minutes early, not because I was anxious, but because I wanted a moment to breathe, to center myself, to walk through the office like it was already in my rearview mirror. The air inside Northwell and Hunt felt heavier that morning, buzzier. Everyone looked unusually focused, or maybe just unusually quiet. Maybe they sensed something, or maybe the chaos of their own blind spots was finally catching up to them. The glass-walled conference room sat at the corner of the 21st floor, overlooking Lexington Avenue. I'd spent years walking past it, watching important people meet in there making decisions, approving budgets, offering titles I never received. Now it was my turn to walk in. The leadership team was already seated. Mason Wu, flown in from San Francisco for one day only. Clara, sitting upright but pale, and 3 other executives I'd worked under but never for. I placed the sealed envelope on the table in front of me and slid it forward. Mason hadn't even opened his mouth yet. "What's this?" he asked. "My resignation," I said, evenly. "Effective 2 weeks from today." You could hear the shift in the air, not loud but seismic. Mason blinked, then glanced at Clara, then back at me. "Lauren, this is unexpected." "I doubt that," I replied, folding my hands neatly in my lap. "But I appreciate the opportunity to say it first." Clara leaned forward. "Lauren, if this is about the promotion," I held up a hand gently. "It's not." She hesitated. "It's not just about the promotion," I clarified. "Or rather, the lack of 12 of them. It's about clarity. The kind that builds slowly, quietly, until it's irreversible." Mason shifted. "I don't think you understand the timing of this. You're currently leading our top 3 healthcare accounts. We're in the middle of Q1 planning." "I do understand," I said. "That's why I'm giving 2 weeks' notice. You'll have time to regroup." They weren't ready for that. They weren't ready for the calm. The meeting devolved into bargaining. "What if we fast-tracked your promotion?" Clara asked. "What if we restructured the role around you?" Another VP offered. "What if we doubled your salary?" I let them finish. Then I said, "I've already built something else. I'm not leaving because I'm bitter. I'm leaving because I'm prepared." That ended the meeting. I returned to my desk as if it were any other Tuesday. I answered emails. I forwarded summaries. I even joined Maya on a call, where she fumbled through her portion and whispered to me to jump in under her breath. I did, out of habit more than grace. By the end of the day, word had started to spread. Jacob from Aisha was the first to say something. "Wait, are you really leaving?" "Yep." He nodded slowly, almost with respect. "I always thought you were the one holding this place together." That evening, I met Renee for dinner. She raised a glass before I even sat down. To the quiet exit that became the loudest message, she said. I laughed. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. The next day, the unraveling began. Cura Labs emailed to request a full review of their project timeline in Lauren's absence. Everwell asked if I would still be available for independent contract work. Clara called an emergency meeting and asked if I would train Maya on my systems. I smiled and said, "Happy to at my consultation rate." She didn't respond. By Friday, Mason himself walked past my desk. He didn't stop, but he did glance down at the envelope still resting in my outbox tray. That afternoon, Maya asked if she could pick my brain. I said no. On Monday morning, I arrived to find an entire thread of panicked emails about a data dashboard no one could access. Apparently, I'd built it 3 years ago to replace a failing system. No one had documented it. No one had updated it. No one had even known it was mine. I did not fix it. Instead, I forwarded the Slack messages to Clara with a short note. "Happy to assist. Please see attached hourly rate sheet." She didn't reply. At 3:27 I received a message from Mason. "Can we talk?" I walked into his office, his real office, not Zoom, and sat across from him. The walls were covered in minimalist art. The windows looked out over the skyline. "I'd like to make a counteroffer," he said. I waited. Director level. Choose your own clients. Remote option. Equity. It was everything I would have killed for 2 years ago. But now, I shook my head. "Why?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Because you only saw my value the moment I decided to take it with me." He looked away. "You built something here," he said softly. "No," I replied. "I built something despite here." Then I stood up and left his office. He stood there, silent at first. No tie, wrinkled shirt, a rare break in his usually pristine armor. For the first time since I met Vernon Wu, the man who had built Northwell and Hunt's sleek, cold image. I saw him as something fragile. Human, name your price, he repeated. I didn't look up right away. I let the pause hang, let it stretch like a violin string pulled just enough to vibrate. Then I stood, slid my laptop shut, and met his eyes. I already have. He blinked. Excuse me. I named it 6 months ago when I realized I was the one keeping this place afloat, and no one cared enough to see it. His jaw tightened. Lauren, this is a turning point. We know that. That's why I'm here. We're prepared to give you what you've earned. Title, equity, authority. No more delays. I'm here to make it right. It was almost believable. Almost, but it was too late. Every offer you make now, I said, is reactive, not recognition. If I had quietly accepted the 12th rejection, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You're angry, he said. No, I replied. I'm finished. I left him standing there, speechless in the hallway as I walked into my last official client call with Everwell, and I smiled. My final week at Northwell moved in slow, surreal motion. People who hadn't spoken to me in months dropped by to wish me luck. Maya left a post-it on my keyboard. You carried more than you should have. I'm sorry. Good luck. Clara scheduled a one-on-one. If there's anything I can do, she started. I just thanked her. There was nothing left to say. The clients knew. Most had already found me online, through whispers, referrals, or sheer curiosity. My website had started getting direct traffic. My business email pinged more often than my company inbox. On my last day, I arrived early, packed my things carefully. Old drama. Just the basics. A mug, 2 pens I liked, a small frame photo of my sister and me in Prospect Park. I left the books on management strategy and the power of grit on the shelf. They weren't mine anymore. I wrote a short note on the whiteboard by my desk. 6 years, 1 long lesson. Thank you and goodbye. At 4:52 p.m, I walked out of the building, holding a box small enough to carry in one hand. The sky was warm for April, and the sidewalks buzzed with the sound of spring energy returning to the city. I didn't look back. The first 30 days of Bright North Media felt like walking through sunlight after a long storm. I had 5 contracts signed before my first invoice was even due. Everwell and Cura Labs came instantly. 2 others arrived through recommendations, and one, a health tech startup in Austin, found me through LinkedIn and requested a strategy sprint. I worked hard, but this time, it didn't feel like bleeding for something I'd never own. It felt like planting something I'd finally get to harvest. I set my own schedule. No more 11 p.m. Man, Slack pings. No more 3-tier approvals to get a budget cleared. When a client asked for a rush job, I simply quoted the rush rate, and they agreed. By month 3, I had hired 2 part-time collaborators, Tanya, a brilliant analytics expert from Oregon, who'd been laid off in a wave of optimization, and Jason, a former agency copywriter tired of hollow branding fluff. Together, we built something honest, sharp, and fast. The revenue doubled by month 4. At month 5, Maya emailed again. We met in Bryant Park. You were right, she said simply. About everything. She looked older, not in years, but in where. They're falling apart, she added. No structure, no memory. They mention you in meetings, but never by name. It's like saying it out loud gives you power. I smiled faintly. They're not wrong. I want in, she said. I'm tired of surviving. I want to build something. I paused, then said, send me your pitch deck. Show me what you've learned. She did. I hired her 2 weeks later. By the end of the year, Bright North Media had 11 clients on retainer and had crossed $750,000 in revenue. We had a team of 7, fully remote, fully trusted. I paid everyone above market, offered Fridays off every other week, sent a box of custom mugs and thank you cards to every team member after their first project. We didn't chase unicorns. We just did great work, quietly and consistently, and we were booked out 6 months in advance. Then, the email came. Subject, Strategic Merger Inquiry, from Vernon Wu, date, March 3rd. Lauren, I know time has passed, but I'd like to reopen the door to possibility. We've been following Bright North's growth. We believe there's alignment in our vision and would like to propose a merger, equal seat at the table, shared resources, shared clients. Let's build together. Would you be open to a conversation? I sat with it for a full hour. Then I replied, Vernon, thank you for the interest. I've worked hard to build something that doesn't require compromise to prove its worth. I'm proud of that, and I'm going to keep going as I am. Best of luck. Lauren. I hit send, closed the laptop, looked around my apartment, the one I'd finally had repainted in soft terracotta, and let out a long breath. The kind of breath that says, you're no longer chasing validation. You're choosing freedom. Sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is walking away not in anger, but in clarity. When you're no longer desperate to be chosen, you start choosing yourself. Systems built on silence won't recognize your value until it's gone, and by then, you may have already outgrown them. Revenge doesn't always look like a takedown. Sometimes, it looks like peace, control, and getting paid what you're worth. Build quietly, exit strategically, and let your success echo where your presence once had to scream. Because dignity is the loudest answer to those who once refused to listen.